This is the 2022 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend in the incredible looking Cyber Orange. It looks really sharp. Now, I've always been a fan of orange colored cars. It's just something that pops. It's something that's very different from the traditional like blacks and whites and things like that you're gonna see all over the road. This thing looks fairly sharp and it's a nice metallic paint. One of the cool things is that the Cyber Orange Metallic was introduced for the rest of the Bronco Sport lineup for the 2022 model, which is amazing. Now, there are a few small changes from the 21s to the 22s, and this specific video is just going to be a quick look at the Big Bend specifically. But if you're looking for a more in-depth look, specifically looking at how to use like the steering wheel buttons, the instrument cluster, navigating the media screen, to do things like hooking up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, check down in the description. I've put together some crazy comprehensive videos showing how all of that stuff is done. I do want to thank Formula Ford for giving me access to this vehicle for the day to shoot the video for you guys. Check down in the description below for their contact details. But let's unpack the Big Bend and figure out what this thing has to offer. So it is kind of nice. Now, the Big Bend is the second highest trim, well, I should say second lowest? The second trim level, because we've got the base, Big Bend, Outer Banks, and then the Badlands version of the vehicle. So Big Bend is essentially going to be the second from the bottom. We're going to say second from the bottom in this case, but it's still very capable. And this specific one is fairly loaded. It comes with a ton of different options. It's got the optional convenience package, which gives us a reverse sensing system. It's got the Ford Co-Pilot 360 package, which is going to give us our adaptive cruise control system on top of that. So there are quite a few things that the Bronco has to offer, but let's start on the outside and then we'll work our way in as we go. So the tires inside of the Bronco Sport in the Big Bend, they're going to be a 17-inch tire as a default with the options for these. So an 18-inch tire instead. So you've got a few different styles that are available right from the factory. The Bronco's strictly going to be available 4x4 as well. We don't have any front wheel or rear wheel drive options for this thing, but overall it is nice. We would have the option for fender flares directly from the factory. So if you want a little bit more unique look, we can either have it like a black matte kind of like this, or we could have it painted body color. But this thing popped out with those fender flares, looks really sharp. I love it. We've got our Big Bend logo right along the side of the door. And then that same kind of molding that follows all the way through, goes all the way throughout the body, along the driver passenger side, into that back wheel well, and even into the rear bumper. So we've got some nice symmetry and a good look throughout the styling of the Bronco Big Bend. It's really nice. Now, a few things. We do have the option for a few things. So our LED headlamps, fog lamps, etc. aren't going to be standard. It is available optionally, but it's really nice. Now, one thing that's different in the Big Bend compared to something like the Badlands, if your idea of if you're going to be using your Bronco Sport to go off-road a little bit more, I would actually recommend looking at the Badlands instead. For a few reasons. We've got the bash plates underneath the vehicle. It's got a front-facing camera as well, so you can see what's going on in front of you with a 180-degree view. It's got a beefier 2-liter engine as well, but we'll get to the engine in a second. So the question you have to ask yourself for which trim level do you go for is, what are you planning on doing with it? If you just want to get into a Bronco Sport because of how great this thing looks, you could just get away with something like the Big Bend or the base instead. So it's going to come down to what features are important for you. But styling inside of this, I love it. Especially, like I said, in this orange, it just pops so nicely. We've got our blind spot system, so that's going to highlight, letting us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. On the outside here, we've got a 5-digit number in order to be able to get inside the vehicle if we don't have the fob on us. We've got the option for intelligent access. So as long as we've got the key fob on us, we can press here to lock the doors, slide our hand in order to unlock. Really, really nice look. Okay, so a few highlights along the door. We've got this nice metallic highlight that follows all the way through, and that carries through part of the center stack as well. Our basic side view mirror control, window control, a little handle there, and then some storage along the door. We've got our Bronco badge right along the scuff plate there. Driver's seat inside of the Big Bend is going to be a powered telescoping, so forwards, backwards, up and down. We can adjust our backrest, and then we've got two-way lumbar support, whereas the passenger seat is going to be a manual adjust instead. So manual, there's a sliding bar in the front there. I'll show you that in a minute. But left-hand side of the steering wheel, series of other options. Figure out what's going on with our running lamps. We've got the button for fog lamps because these are optional. We've got our increase, decrease the brightness of the cluster screen, Steering wheel is going to be a manual adjust. And then we've also got the release to get underneath the hood. We're just going to crank that twice. Let's go have a peek. I do like the styling. Looks fantastic looking at the hood there. We've got this like kind of wave texture, which looks great. And so we've got our LED headlamps there, Bronco badge along the very front. It looks really nice. Now getting under the hood, because we've pulled twice, all we have to do is lift up. And we do have just a manual bar there. So lifting up and in it goes. Super simple. But we've got this, and that's the 1.5 liter EcoBoost engine. Like the Bronco Sport technically does have two different engine choices that are available, but it's going to depend on which version of the vehicle you're in, because when you're in the base, the Big Bend, or the Outer Banks, we're strictly looking at the 1.5 liter EcoBoost as an option, versus in the Badlands, you can get the 2 liter turbocharged instead. So the 2 liter turbo is standard in the Badlands, not available in any of the other trim levels of the vehicle. But even still, power-wise, like this is fairly respectable. Like it's 181 horsepower and 190 pound-feet of torque. So a good amount of power there. If you're handy, we can easily top up fluids if we need to. You can easily check your oil. And then we've also got easy access to the battery. You can also change bulbs yourself. It's very easy access if we want to go that route for both the driver and for the passenger side. So as I said, if you're inclined, you've got the capability to do it. No sort of engine cover at all inside of the EcoBoost engines, and then we don't have any sort of heat shield along the very top either. But overall, good look, good layout, nice simple functionality all at the same time. It's kind of nice. But walking around, I like the styling of the rims. It's good. We've got our bucking Bronco right in the middle of the rim there as well. It looks fantastic. Big Bend logo follows through the passenger side. And then if we even look over the top, so this one has the optional sunroof that's available inside of the Bronco. One thing, I mentioned that there were some differences in the 21 to the 22 models. The 2021 Bronco Sport had the option for things like the Big Bend package, the Outer Banks package, and things like that. Those are essentially gone now. So we could get other packages to give us similar features, but the sunroof is now its own standalone beast. So if you want the sunroof, you can get it. It's just its own individual add-on for the 2022 model of the vehicle. But we've got our side rails there. We've got the options for crossbars. Some other things such as, we could literally throw a tent on top of this thing. There's the option for awnings and a few other things as well. We've got our little antenna in the back that's fully removable. And then towards the back end here, nice looking tail lamps. I did mention, so we've got the reverse sensing system in this one, so we can make out the reverse sensors there. That's optional inside of the Big Bend version of the vehicle. It's going to be standard inside of the Outer Banks version though. But good look. And then typical Bronco styling. So we've got our Bronco Sport badge along the very back. And then we've got this. So backup camera is standard. We've got our glass as well as our door release. So we could pop the glass. If we wanted to just get our glass up there, gives us a nice amount of space there. Or, I just noticed that. Oh, hello. Oh, neat. You can't really see it on the outside there, but let me change out your vantage point there. So we've got a little old school Bronco there. I've literally never noticed that before. Cool. Little Easter egg. And then from there, we can go the other side. We hit the door there and pop up. But really nice look. I like some of the small details, but firstly, I just want to point out the cargo dimensions inside of this thing. So if we take a peek, there is actually quite a little bit of space back here, which is nice. And then we can make it out just behind the second row seats. We've also got our tether points. So we've got our tether points there. So front-facing, rear-facing child seats won't be an issue because we've also got all of our necessary seat anchors, which I'll show you a little bit of a clearer spot when we get into the second row. But folding down the second row seats is very straightforward. So we've got a button right on the very top, so you could actually fold it down from the cargo area. Down it goes, but look at how much more space we've got when we've got that second row folded down. So if you need the space, you need the space. One great thing is that we do have, so this mat is essentially going to be available either from the factory or aftermarket. And it's just a thermoplastic rubber tray with the Bronco logo right in the middle of the mat. And then fully removable there. And as you can see there, we've also got a texturized back here as well. So, benefit here is that we can easily take this thing out in order to spray it down if it gets a little messy. We've got these back seat covers as well that are going to be optional. So fully removable, available as an add-on from the factory, aftermarket, etc. But a good amount of space. Now, one thing, we do have multi-tier for the storage here, because if we have it on the lower part of it, take a peek. So with it in the lower part there, we do have a little bit of a bump, so it's not flat. But we can take this, we can slide it up, and all of a sudden, we've got a flat fold instead. So if you need a little bit of a flatter fold, you've got that as an option. Taking this thing, it's fully removable, but we've got our mini spare tire with the optional for full size, depending on how the vehicle's configured. A little bit of storage space off to that left and right side with our white spigot if we're ever filling up using a jerry can. And our jack and things like that are just underneath the mini spare tire. A few other things to point out, we do have, so a few hooks there. We need some shelving. We've got a 12-volt power point off to the right-hand side. A little Bronco light, with our Bronco logo, I should say. And then off to the other side, we do also have a little light, a little button there for our lights. And that's going to be for these. So directional flood lamps, which are great. So if you're going to be camping, you want to set some things up later on at night, kind of see what's going on. We've got that option. So it's going to be on both sides there. Just kind of nice and subtle. Turn the thing off. And one other thing to point out in the back, we also do have a little bottle opener along the side. Now, I did mention, so we've got this thermoplastic rubber tray available either from the factory or aftermarket. And it's the same way with these guys here as well. So we've got our thermoplastic rubber mats. Same idea, we can get those either from the factory. There are some good aftermarket options like WeatherTech and things like that you can get as well, like tons and tons of options that are available, which is kind of nice. But I do like base styling there. We've got this like weave texture right along the back. And down it goes. Really straightforward. Now, what else can I point out? So along the side here, we also do have, capless system. So just insert, fill up, and you're good to go. And we've got a little Easter egg. I might just be able to make it out, but we've got some Broncos right along the side there, which is kind of neat. Now, the EcoBoost engine, so actually if we look at the horsepower and torque specs, those are achieved using a premium fuel. But one of the nice things is that it doesn't matter if you're in the 1.5 turbo or the 2-liter turbo, minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just your regular 87 gas, so regular fuel. You don't need to use a premium fuel, but if you want to unlock the truest performance inside of this thing, 89, ideally a 91, but it's definitely not necessary. So, I mean, which way you go is going to be your choice. You know, right now, like we're sitting at, what's that? $2.02 a liter right now in Canada. So prices are like a little crazy. So you don't need to worry about using a higher premium fuel inside of this thing. It's going to work really, really nicely just with regular fuel. I already pointed out all of the highlights along the driver door, etc. So hopping inside. Oh, this is nice. I love the basics here. So basic walkthrough. We've got a little button on the tip of that stick. That's going to be for our lane keeping system. We've got our four-way blinkers, things like that. Oh, four-way blinkers are there, I should say. We've got our high beams there. Off to the right side, figure out what's going on with our front and our rear windshield wiper. Series of different messages are going to pop up on the screen because I've got a few things open, but this is going to be our base cluster setup. So no way to really customize the overall look and layout, but still it's kind of got a nice little setup there. We've got some options there, as you can see, navigation, driver assistance settings. We've got different things that we can show on this screen. So quite a few options. Now I did mention, so this one's got the Ford Copilot 360 Assist Plus package, which gives us the adaptive cruise control. We've also got our speed sign recognition on top of that. Along the right-hand side, we've got a few different other pads. So this pad is going to let us change between all of our different screens there. We can answer, hang up on a phone call. We've got a voice command prompt. So one of the cool things is that we've got a voice command prompt to do things like change songs, radio stations. If we had factory navigation inside of the Bronco, we also would have the option of pressing that in order to navigate using our voice. And then one of the great things is that if you're hooked up through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, they're both wired, but you've also got the flexibility of using your Google or Siri Assistant by pressing that button as well. It's kind of neat, but there's so many different options. I love the little bucking Bronco. We've got our nice chrome look for the Bronco itself, which looks fairly sharp. But it is nice we've got so many options. We've got so many options for tuning. The screen is really user-friendly. 94.9 FM.
Tuning to FM 94.9.
That's kind of nice. So the Bronco does have a few different setups for the audio system. Inside of the lower trim levels, it's going to be a 6-speaker audio system with the option for a 10-speaker Bang & Olufsen when we get into the Outer Banks and the Badlands version of the vehicle. But even still, this base system pretty good. It's pretty good for what it is. Like, you could always do something aftermarket if you want to, but that is a fairly nice sound standard. But the media screen inside of this is great. Tons of different options that are available. But as I mentioned, if you want to walk through on the media screen, so figuring out how to set up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, using navigation, you want to know how any of the buttons here work, check in the description below. I've put together some comprehensive videos, but there are so many great options that are available inside of this vehicle. It's amazing. We've got some killer driver assistance settings, pre-collision assist systems, blind spot systems, and a number of other great things. Moving down, we've got our auto start stop system, and this is the one that's going to kill power to the engine if we're stopped for an extended period of time. 4-way blinkers, change songs, radio stations. We've got our audio settings, so we can change it turbo, mid-range, bass. We can turn the whole screen off, so we go and go to a calming screen, turn it off completely, bring it back to life. We've got a little storage tray right next to our start stop button there. So we are push button start inside of this version of the vehicle. As we start to move down from there, a few other options that are available. So we've got our, oh, so nice, fan control there. It says it's toasty outside, so this is really nice. Single zone climate control. We've got heated front row seats. We've also got a few basic climate control settings there. As we start to move down, we do have the option for a wireless charge pad. 2 USB ports, so a USB, USB-C. We've got a 12-volt power point in the front there as well. Moving down, so the center stack, we do have our shifter there, so our regular rotary dial. We've got park reverse neutral drive into our low gear. Low gear is what we're going to be using if we're going to be taking a boat out of water, things like that, or if we're doing any sort of like basic off-roading. We've got our parking brake, our auto hold setting, and then our GOAT mode, so our go over any terrain mode. So as we start to rotate that dial, we've got 5 base modes in the Big Bend, so our normal, eco, sport, slippery, and then sand conditions. And each one of those modes are going to do something different. So if you're more economically conscious, the eco mode is going to be where you want to live. If you're a little bit more of a fan of a little bit better performance, the sport mode is probably where you want to be. It's amazing. It's going to rev up the RPMs a little bit higher, give you higher shifting points, which just makes it feel more aggressive. And the 1.5 turbo engine, it loves the sport mode. So if you're not as concerned, like, you're going to use a teeny bit more fuel in that sport mode, but it is really nice. And then when you get into the Badlands version of the vehicle, you're going to have a few extra modes as well. So it's going to depend, as I mentioned, on which version of the vehicle that you're in. But from there, we've got a few cup holders, no sort of ambient light, unfortunately. But we've got our armrest there. Popping that up, we've got a few more power points. So another USB and another USB-C, and a decent amount of storage there. So we start to move up overhead. We've got our auto-dimming rearview mirror. Hello. And then from there, we've got our cabin control lights. As I mentioned, this one does have the optional sunroof. So opening the roof up is very straightforward. So we've got this base control in order to open up the shade. And then we've also got this, so we can open and close. So we can push this button in when the roof's closed in order to vent out, or we push again to close, and then we push this way in order to be able to open. And you are going for a little ride. And that's as far as it's going to open there. So it's not going to go further than that, but it is kind of nice having the sunroof as an option, especially if you're going to be taking it on trails. It just opens things up so nicely. I love it. Now, as I mentioned, that having the sunroof optional is in the 2020, well, even in the 21, it was optional in the Big Bend package. But as I mentioned, the sunroof is now its own standalone option. So you're not going to get that as an included feature in any trim levels of the vehicle. It's strictly available optionally. It's still kind of nice all at the same time, though. But the base styling inside of this is great. The Big Bend does feature cloth seats. We've got a few different styles that are available. We've got a little pocket there as well on both the driver and the passenger side. So not a ton of stuff along the side there, but I mean, we do have our basics, which is nice. Let's go take a look at that second row, but I do love the overall styling of the Bronco Sport. All right, and off she goes. And here we go. So very similar to the first row. So we've got that same type of weave texture along the door. That same metallic highlight follows throughout the second row. Our window control, little storage spaces on top of that. And I did mention, so this is going to be available optionally, and that's our rubberized back. We've got our top tethers there, so front-facing, rear-facing child seats. Not going to have an issue because, as I mentioned, this thing There we go. Also has our anchor points there. So we're calling them ISOFIX for the 2022 models. We've got a few cup holders there as well. Oh, really nice. Now, you might just be able to make it out. So we do also have pockets here. So zippered pockets along the driver and the passenger in the second row. And it's actually a fairly deep pocket. That's kind of, look at that. Look how much space is back there. It's kind of neat. All right, and hopping inside. So, spacious and comfy. Nice amount of bounce to it, just kind of nice. So, I'm 6 feet tall. I've got the driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall. And like I've got a boatload of headspace right now, like what, 6 inches plus of headspace, which is kind of nice. So this one obviously does have the sunroof, and even with the roof, I still have a great amount of space inside of this thing. So a good amount of first row and second row space. So if you've got like full-size versions of me, like 5 full-size versions of me, it'll be a little tight in the middle seat, but not impossible all at the same time. Like, if I drew the short straw, I wouldn't mind having to be in the car for a shorter trip. But even in this middle row, like, I've got a decent amount of knee space, good amount of foot space, and the same amount of overhead space on top of that. The kicker, though, is the middle seat. Not super comfortable just because of the way that the headrest is. So, still, though, it is kind of nice. Fair enough. So, a few other things to point out in the second row. We do have our lights. We can click them on off. We've got assist handles on both the driver and the passenger side with a little hook on both sides, so clothing hook there as well. And from there, we also do have a few power points. So we've got 2 more USB ports, so another USB, USB-C. We've got our basic vent control on top of that. So some versions of the Bronco Sport are going to be dual zone climate control, but we will never have climate control options inside of the second row of the Bronco Sport, unfortunately. And that's the same way across the entire Bronco Sport lineup. Like I said, features, styling-wise, seat comfortability is still actually pretty solid inside of this thing. It's kind of nice. This is good. This is good. Now, one other thing that I didn't point out, towing inside the Bronco Sport. So this specific one doesn't have the optional tow package from the factory, but it is available there as an option. Now, looking at towing inside of the Bronco Sport, 2,000-pound towing capacity, which is still fairly respectable for the vehicle this size, because it is based off of the same platform as the Ford Escape as well as the Maverick. So all kind of in the same class there. So it's going to be a matter of what kind of vehicle do you need? Like, what's important for you? I do love that we can use the adaptive cruise system, though, just on like regular streets. Where I find that system really comes into play is if you're like a teeny little bit of a lead foot. Like if you've got 1 or 2 speeding tickets, the adaptive cruise is amazing because it's a subconscious play. And the reason that it's a subconscious play is because if the car in front of you slows down, you've got it set at, let's say you're going a $120 in the highway, car in front of you slows down, you're automatically brakes. So like subconsciously you're like, I'm still technically speeding, but you're not because the car's got you slowed down. So I love it. It's a great system, very, very user-friendly to use, as I mentioned there. But I mean, it's so simple. I love it. Love it. Good system. Seat's actually surprisingly comfortable for just being like a regular cloth seat. This is kind of nice. And the 1.5 EcoBoost, like it's same thing, has a good amount of power to it. You need the power. But I mean, it's a huge, I'm going to be upfront, it's a huge night and day performance difference on the 1.5 to the 2 liter. It's just the amount of power difference. Like we're 181 horsepower versus 250. So, I mean, 30% bump there? So, I mean, if power's important for you, you're definitely going to want to be in the Badlands. But, I mean, it's a matter of personal preference there. A little bit of fun. And even speeding up, it's nice. And one of the cool things, so the car in front of me is going significantly slower than speed limit. So it's 100 right now, and they're going 83, 84. I've got the adaptive speed set up for 100 kilometers an hour. So it's kind of neat because my hands, I'm not on the gas, brake, whatever. The car's doing everything for me right now. So we can set that preemptively, and then as the car as the cars in front of you start to speed up, you change lanes, get out of the way, whatever the case may be. It's going to pick you up to whatever your set speed is. So it's a very smart system. I do love that we can use all of these things in tandem. So I've got the adaptive cruise control setting going, while I've also got the lane centering system going. So this thing is keeping me perfectly balanced in the lane. Hands technically have to be on the steering wheel. There we go. So hands technically have to be on the steering wheel, but it's keeping me fully balanced in the lane as we go. I still have the adaptive cruise set up for 100. Car in front of me is going 85, so it's keeping me balanced there. But one of the cool things, like I mentioned, this thing's got some power. So we need to use that power. It's available there as an option, which is great. But I just love what Ford's done with the Bronco Sport. The base styling and the capability is fantastic, especially when you get up into the Badlands version of the vehicle with the bash plates and front-facing camera on top of that. So many different options available, but one thing the Bronco Sport doesn't have that the Escape has is going to be the optional hybrid. So we've got regular hybrid or the plug-in version, which the Bronco Sport doesn't have as of yet. I'm like, fingers crossed, maybe we'll see a hybrid or electric in the next couple years. Be kind of neat. But that was a look at the 2022 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend. What did you think? It's a fairly nice ride. A lot of different options that are available, good feature sets, good optional feature sets. This one is fairly loaded, but even if you didn't want something really loaded, this thing is still fairly competitively priced for the feature set that it does have. What did you think? If you have any questions, need to bounce some ideas off of me, drop down in the comment section below and let me know. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your social networks, and until I see you next time, take care.